All right, let's talk some Justin Fields. I think the first thing that we should say is that no quarterback comes into this situation and plays well. There isn't a single quarterback who would come into this situation and win the game. Tom Brady doesn't win this game. Patrick Mahomes doesn't win this game. Lamar Jackson doesn't win this game. I think those quarterbacks obviously would probably perform better, but this was a tough situation for Fields to be in. There also were some concerns besides that. And listen, the glaring stat that people are going to talk about is going to be the 9 sacks. And while that's obviously horrible, it's not just on the offensive line. People need to, eventually, I hope people will start to realize that a sack is not just an offensive line statistic. It's usually an entire team statistic. Some of these sacks were legitimately just the Bears offensive line playing poorly or the Browns defensive line playing well, whichever way you want to phrase it. Some were on the fact that no receivers were getting open. Fields is holding on to the ball because he has to, because no one's open. And then there legitimately were things Fields could do, and he just held on to the ball and took too many sacks. One thing I don't really talk about in this video, but did happen, was Fields had a couple of times when I felt like he dropped way too far back. You want to stay, there's a certain amount of yards you have to stay in the pocket, and he did drop sometimes 10, 11 yards back, and that kind of allowed Myles Garrett to get some of those sacks where he's barely touched and he can just run around because how far back Fields dropped. So that was an issue, and that's something that people just don't seem to realize. I remember having these exact arguments about Josh Rosen a couple of years ago when people kept saying, no, it's the offensive line's fault, when it was his fault, and hopefully Fields does not go the way of Josh Rosen. But yeah, anyways, let's get into the film study and talk a little bit more about what I'm talking about, and there also were some positives. So let's talk about the whole thing, and again, I want to be very clear. If he's a rookie making his first start, no one expected him to play well, but I also didn't think he played well. All right, so we'll start things off with this play. This is kind of a good example of sort of what Fields got away with in college that he can't really get away with in the NFL, at least not as consistently. And it's what he got away with in the preseason as well. But again, with better talent means that it's just going to be more difficult for him to scramble, right? So this is man coverage, and I think kind of the hope with Justin Fields was that, hey, teams aren't going to want to play man coverage as much against you because you can run the ball so effectively, and therefore you'll play zone. You can run concepts designed to beat zone. But on this play, when Fields takes the snap, you even notice there's seemingly a gap where Fields can run right there. In college, he takes off and he picks up a first down and probably a touchdown, right? That's kind of what you're able to get away with in college. But two things to note here. One, this is not a traditional just cover one blitz or anything. It's a cover one hole, meaning there's a linebacker over the middle of the field who basically, he's very aware of hey, there could be a quick throw over the middle, but also Fields will likely at least think about running, so be ready to come in and make a play. Also, there's a defensive tackle right in front of Fields, so while this appears to be a situation where he can scramble out, when he tries to, he's going to end up running right into a sack, and even does a good job of kind of breaking out of it, right, because he is so athletic, but there's just another guy comes right there, Myles Garrett. So that's just kind of some of the issues, and people never want to blame a sack on anything other than the offensive line, but largely it's not because of the offensive line. Another aspect of this play wasn't just Fields, but also no one really getting open, and those two things working together resulted in a good amount of sacks, even though I think most people put all of the blame on the line. This one is another one where I do kind of have to put some blame on Fields. The last one, you can maybe say, he's going to have to learn. But that's not, again, we talk bad versus concerning. That's clearly not concerning, right? That's just something he has to learn. Can't quite get away with as much in the NFL as you do in college. This one I probably would also say is in the bad and not concerning category. But I guess what adds it a little bit is these are real concerns I had going into his first NFL start. This is issues I had with him in college. So the way it works is going up against zone coverage. This is kind of that play, right, where you run play action, have a receiver run over the middle. This is a concept designed to beat the coverage that you're currently going up against. So Matt Nagy gets a lot of criticism. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a lot of it. He certainly does in a lot of ways. But also, there were instances where he called the right play. This is one of those instances. And watch how right when this play starts. So you see a play action. Couple of things to note here. So one, I saw some people kind of giving Fields some criticism for not picking up the blitz right here. I really don't blame that. So it's the player in the black circle. He's the blitzing player. And to me, this isn't really it's not even a bad play, I don't think. I think most quarterbacks don't pick this up. because it wasn't even like a blitz immediately. It was kind of a delayed blitz. It might not have even been a blitz, just Cleveland player saw he had a straight shot to Fields and is taking it. So I don't blame Fields at all for that. What I do blame him for is not making this throw. You got to know when stuff is open and when stuff isn't, and this is about as open as you're going to get. While yes, there is a linebacker who's kind of in the way, his back is turned, so he can't see where the ball is. But again, this is something a lot of young quarterbacks just have a hard time understanding going into, their first games and their first few games, sometimes even the entire first season, is what you can or can't get away with. We saw Zach Wilson throw a lot of interceptions because he thought he could get away with everything. Same thing with Lawrence. In this scenario, it's kind of the opposite. Fields can get away with something, but he's being a bit too cautious. So it can go both ways. Look, Fields it looked like he wanted to scramble for a second. Never saw the blitzing player until he got hit. Maybe you could say he should have saw it eventually, but even that I find a little bit tough. It was just a good defensive play by Cleveland, and also a throw that Fields, quite frankly, should have made. And there were some dangerous throws. There was really what probably should have been an interception, got called back due to a weak penalty they threw trying to get to Allen Robinson on a 3rd and 19. That one wasn't great. This one, another example of a throw that he just shouldn't have made, quite frankly. And again, I don't want to crush him. He's trying to make stuff happen. It worked both ways, right? Sometimes he didn't make the throw he should have made. Sometimes he made the throw he shouldn't have made. This is a zone coverage play, and what's going to happen is that it's going to be, you have a receiver just running a route over the middle, could get into a gap in coverage. So again, on paper, this could work, but you don't want to just do this willy-nilly. You have to make sure that it definitely can get open. And watch, right when this play starts, it could get open actually, but just wait a beat longer, I would say. Cleveland is really well over this. And in fact, if Fields gets off this first read and goes to the check down higher, towards the top of the screen, that is wide open. And I do kind of take that into consideration. Some of these sacks, I'm sure some people will say, oh, Fields needs to learn to take a check down. A lot of them, there wasn't a check down there. But on this play, there was a check down, and he probably should have thrown it there. Instead, he fires one in that easily could have been intercepted. And again, he threw it hard enough that it was realistically, it was going to be tough for it to be picked. It was also going to be tough for it to be caught, though, even if he did hit his spot. So just as a whole, a dangerous pass, right? Not the complete end of the world, but again, these are rookie mistakes, so nothing overly concerning. If you're still a Justin Fields believer, you should still believe in Justin Fields after even all of this stuff. And there was something like this where what I see a lot of on Twitter, it's one of those narratives that I kind of wonder, how do these narratives start? Because why is everyone all of a sudden saying this? But a lot of people want to see stuff like this more. Design rollouts with Justin Fields, which I guess makes sense. I agree with the idea behind it. It's just sort of weird how we've all came to that conclusion. I wonder if that's something popular in Chicago sports media or something, but it does make sense. Sure, do this stuff more often with a mobile quarterback. That makes sense to me. You're going to have Fields roll out to the top of the screen, and so you have 3 routes that Fields could throw to. And watch how. So it's a play action. Fields does get to the outside right here. And this, I don't really even fully understand how this throw worked, but this is a good decision to make for Fields, right? Because you have a defensive back whose back is turned. He can't play the ball. So this is him making that correct decision. And while we, can crush him for all the poor decisions he made in this game, he did make some correct ones as well, so we should reward him for those. And this is the hope, if you're a Bears fan, is that he'll learn how to stop making those bad decisions and he'll continue to make these good plays. Because watch the accuracy on this. Look, he definitely takes some off of it, but it's a perfectly catchable ball. And that's a difficult throw to make. Allen Robinson doing Allen Robinson things as well. So all of that stuff, very good, but a really good play from Justin Fields. So again, it wasn't, even though there was, especially at the start, at one point he had taken 5 dropbacks, and 3 of them were sacks, and 1 was a designed run or a scramble for a run. So, it was kind of a wild game. But definitely this play, at least, very good. So, yeah, that's what I think. Listen, just looking at the final stat line, it's not a great stat line, right? He ended up with, it was 32 total dropbacks, and he got 6 completions out of that. That is rough. 6 for 20 for 68 yards was his final stat line. Obviously, the 9 sacks played a big role, and then he had 3 rushes for 12 yards as well. Just a rough day, not just by him, the entire Bears offense. That's what happened. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.